Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is December 28th, 2021, and today's guest is Dan Smeltz from Pennsylvania. All right, welcome back to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and today's episode is 194, and we've got a good one. We got Dan Smeltz on. He is part of the Working Class Bowhunter crew. He is from PA. Dan and I have been actually talking quite a bit in the last year, just through text, through, emails, DMs, not emails, that's old school. I still use it, but we don't really email. I don't know why I just said that. But yeah, we've been talking. He hunts a lot of public ground, and he hunts a little bit of private, but today we're going to talk a lot about public ground, but there's a lot that goes into it that can be used for private as well, and different scenarios, how we combat different things, a mental mindset, a lot of different cool intricacies on how he implements things when he goes out of state hunting, because he does a lot of out of state hunting on public. So he's been there, done it, seen it, experiences a lot of stuff. So that's today's podcast in a nutshell. Before we do get into it real quick, I do want to say a couple things. Hunter's Box Club. We are doing the fall. We, as in the fall, are doing a box with Hunter's Box Club next month in January. We're doing a t-shirt, and there's going to be 1 to 3 items in that box with the t-shirt as well. So if you guys go to huntersboxclub.com, join the club. Go in there. It's a monthly delivery of a quality t-shirt and gear. Sorry, a little hoarse this morning. Industry leading brands made up of high quality materials. So it's all it's all printed and everything in the U.S. And it's really cool. It's really cool what these guys do. It was really cool to be a part of it so far. Those guys came and asked and said asked if I wanted to do a shirt, and I said, heck yeah, let's do it. It's real easy. It's 3 steps. If you go to their website, it says join the club or get started. You could do either one. You go in there. They got 2 box options, one for men's, one for women's. You just go in there. It's you can pick your size of the shirt, so small, medium, large, XL, XXL, XXXL, and click on your box and pick how many you want and put your credit card information in there, and there it is, and it's going to show up to your door. So that's really cool. Hunter's Box Club, go check them out. And also ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Go check out Exodus trail cams. These guys are great. Like I said, everybody knows what these cameras can do because a lot of people have heard about them or they've used them. I can just tell you what I know about them. I haven't had an issue. I've said it the last couple weeks, have not had one issue. A couple days ago, my render is like just fermenting in the 1 acre right now, and I had 4 bucks show up on that on Saturday, and they were there for over an hour, each of them right in front of it, eating on the clover. And these things have been taking great pictures. I have no bad things to say about these things at all. They have a 5-year warranty on them. Actually, if you go to their website right now and you sign up for their newsletter, you can save $15 off your next camera. So definitely go check those guys out, ExodusOutdoorGear.com. And we're approaching the end of the year. So I'm a big Michigan Wolverine fan. I've been my whole life, and Michigan's in the college playoff right now against Georgia. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe, but I think they could pull it off. So Friday night, that is what I'm going to be doing, 7:30 Eastern. Go check them out. Go support Michigan for me. I appreciate that. But with that being said, let's get over this interview with Dan, and let's have some fun. Hopefully you guys can have a little mental vacation this week listening to the Fall Podcast. So here you go, interview with Dan. Thank you guys very much for all the support. Welcome back to the Fall Podcast. Today's guest is Dan Smeltz. Dan, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know how long we've been talking about this, texting like little schoolgirls, and sliding
Pretty
into
much.
each other's DMs and stuff like that. And finally, I think we both canceled each other a couple times, and sloppy seconds we are to each other.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, shit, we've been talking about it since what, Kentucky? So September
Yeah,
ish.
August, September, somewhere in there. Yep.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
hoping you and Beck were gonna, lay down some slammers and just come on here and gloat about it a little bit. But you guys basically went out there and shit a solid gold egg. That's what you did.
yeah. We shit the brick real bad.
What
Uh,
was the deal with that trip? I mean, I guess was it public land you guys were on, or do you guys do private out there?
no, it was public. It was public land. Basically, now I hunted this piece 2 years ago, and always I didn't shoot anything back then either. And it was kind of a shitty situation because I went not because of who I went with. I went with my girlfriend. She's super into bow hunting too. But when we got down there, they were doing a creek restoration project, which obviously we weren't anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like kind of the only piece of public in there. So that kind of blew that up for us that whole week. Fast forward to, earlier this September, and well, actually earlier than that, Jeremy's like, "Hey man, like, let's go hunt somewhere." It's pretty much like how it went down. And like, yeah, I got a spot in Kentucky we can go to, like Airbnb's 10 minutes away, piece of public. Nobody hunts it. I ran into like guys who run dogs and stuff for rabbits. That's really big down there.
Mm-hmm.
And just talking to them, small talk, and they're like, "Dude, we've never seen anybody bow hunt this." And I was like, "That's beautiful. That's all I need to know."
Yeah, exactly. So you're in what what part of PA are you in? You're in PA, right?
Yeah, I'm in northeast PA.
Okay, so give me like what's a major city you're by?
2 hours north of Philly. I'm like 20 minutes from Jersey. I'm right by. If anybody's into racing, I'm pretty close to the Pocono Raceway.
Okay, I got you. I can hear the Jersey in your voice.
Yeah, it's from all them Jersey bagels and sandwiches and stuff.
There you go,
I
man.
actually, I work in Jersey.
Okay,
That's how
I
close
got
I am.
you.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
guess if let's get into that. Like, who are you for everybody out there that doesn't know you? I only know you through Working Class Guys. You're part of their crew. So
hmm
kind of give everybody, my listeners, everything like who the hell you are.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Dan Smeltz from Northeast PA, like we just said. I grew up here. I've been hunting my whole life. Started off as primarily a rifle hunter, mainly public land or game lands. Like that's what we call it out here. And just kind of progressively got more and more interested in basically any hunting that got me outdoors more. So got more into archery, even further more into small game, and then waterfowl and all that down the line. And just progressively just getting more and more and more in depth with it, just like everybody else. And pretty much here we are now. Now I hunt public land mostly. I got two pieces of private that I hunt from friends that I've had for years. My buddies don't hunt, but their parents let me hunt their properties, which is awesome. I'm super fortunate to have that. And I know a lot of guys would love to have that. And I find myself not hunting those places and actually hunting public land a lot out here in PA.
So what I guess the biggest thing for me is like, what made you go public?
Size of the deer.
Really?
Yeah. I'll be completely honest, size of the deer. Something different.
Okay, so
Um,
are you saying like the deer as in on public you think they're bigger?
oh yeah, much bigger. It's not even
Really?
close.
Okay.
Yeah, not
Okay.
even remotely close.
Because that goes against the grain as the of the perception out there. You know what I
It
mean?
does.
Like
It really
everybody's
does.
like there's oversaturated hunters on public ground. There's nothing, no big deer out there. But I mean, you always see it. Doesn't matter what state it is. Every year you see it, like guys pulling giants out of public land.
Oh
So
yeah.
when was that moment where you were like, did you put some cameras out and like you were like, holy shit, there's some big deer here, and then it kind of like progressed from there? How'd that transition happen?
So I would say it was kind of slow, and then it was very abrupt by one photo that I was showed by a buddy, pretty much. A long story. We'll shorten it up a little bit, obviously. But when I was hunting private, I hunted these two pieces. My buddy at the time hunted. He moved up to Colorado now, but it's 60 acres, and I've been running cameras on it since 2012. So just short of 10 years, but we've been hunting it for about 15 together. And the biggest deer we ever seen or had on camera was 125-inch deer, like barely, maybe might make coping young, which is I'm fine with. Like
On
we
public,
shot a bunch of
that's
them.
great.
On On private.
Oh, private. Okay, I thought it was
Yeah,
public.
yeah, yeah. No, the 60-acre piece of private. If I said
Yep,
public,
yep.
I fucked up. Sorry.
No, you didn't. I'm
Um,
just not paying attention.
so, and we were fine like that. Like I said, we just, we would shoot them, and it is what it is. And then you start seeing, the outdoor shows, and like we didn't really have access to that until I don't even know, early
Mm-hmm.
20s. Like I didn't know what inches of a deer were. Like that shit meant absolutely nothing to me. It was just filling tags and just having fun. Really, is all it
Right.
was.
Yep.
And slowly started getting, I guess more and more hungry. And all right, like I shot kind of a bunch of these deer, not a bunch, but a good amount. And I just want to see what else there is. And I got a job with some guys who were into hunting other states, that's how when I started working in New Jersey. So then I started hunting public land in there, but we'll stay in PA right now. But so how can I say this? I went to a bow shop to get a bow, like my bow tuned up. Made friends with the guy real quick, just small talk, like any hunters, just kind of end up being
Right.
friends, same age, same idea, He was a big public land guy. Now, rewind 10, 15 years, I grew up hunting public land and never saw a buck in like 10 years of
Right.
hunting public land.
Yep.
So I had a very sour like taste in my mouth. And, coming off of private where I was seeing deer every day and shooting deer, pretty much tagging out every year, whether it be with the bow or the gun.
Yep. So you were
And,
getting to that point, like, where you shot enough of them where you're like, okay, I'm ready to like take it another step. Let's try it out here.
Yeah.
Let's do
Yes.
something different, new challenge. I totally get what you're talking about and where you're at. Get it.
Yeah, but I didn't do it on my own. Like, I'm not going to say I just was like, oh, like I'm just going to go hunt public land.
Yep.
What happened, like, by talking to that buddy who was a bow tech, which I'm still friends with now to this day, we hunt a lot together. He's like, oh, dude, you should hunt public with me. And I'm like, dude, I'm not hunting public land. It's stupid. And, like, honestly, like, that's how it's viewed out here, right? Because of the pressure and, all the stuff that you hear about public land. And he started showing me bucks, and I'm like, dude, there's no way. These aren't public land deer. And he's like,
Yeah.
come with me shed hunting this year. Sure enough, dude, I found a giant set of antlers, and it was just like that. Just
Really?
totally switched my mindset. Yeah.
So, and I don't want this to sound egotistical at all, but I'm kind of to the point where you're at a little bit. Like, I've killed some good bucks on private. That's all I've ever hunted is private.
Mm-hmm.
I've killed some good bucks, some bucks that I thought I would never, ever have the opportunity to kill. And I've kind of accomplished a lot of my goals. Now it's to the point where, like, when you and I were kind of texting and talking recently about public land, like, I want to try it. I keep saying it. Like, everybody listens to this is like, you're a broken record, but why don't you just try it? You know what I mean? Because I know it'll happen. This July and August, I'll have like big deer showing up again on private, and I'm going to put all my time into that, and then not go public. But my thing is, I want to do like one trip a year, if it's a rutcation, whatever it is, and I want to start picking some public and really diving into it, and kind of like testing my craft, like. Really just trying to see what I can do. You know what I mean? Like, try to, I want to fall flat on my face, to be totally honest with you. Like, I want to be successful, but I want to go out there and I want to learn. I want to fall flat on my face to learn.
Right.
I got buddies that have been doing it the last 3 years, and they've been doing the public thing and been doing really good at it. I'm like, okay, now it's time. Like, I need to do it. So that's why I'm like, I need to talk to your ass, because that's all you do is public. And you fell on your face a lot, but you've been very successful a lot though too. So that's a perfect guy to talk to. But I totally get where you're at as far as like challenging yourself. Like, you want to take that next step and do something different. Like, not that you're getting bored with it, but it's like, okay, like I've conquered this. I have I still love doing it as far as the private land thing goes, but I want to try something different. I get that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you do something the same, like you drive to work on the same road every day, you're like, you know what, fuck it, I'm taking the back road today.
Yep.
I'm just tired of seeing the same. And this, like hunting private, it's you could probably take a picture anywhere on the piece of private that I own, or not that I own, that I can hunt, and I'll be like, oh, you're standing right here when you took that photo.
Yep.
And for me, like, I just get bored with that. So then like the public land was like I could scratch that itch. And I'm extremely fortunate where I live too. I'm within 2 hours of 3 states, actually 4 states, and like probably no joke, 1,000,000 acres worth of public land.
Yeah, that's pretty legit. And Michigan has got a ton of public land in Michigan as well. But my family farm, I've talked about it. I've hunted it my whole life. The last 5 years, I've really neglected it. I've maybe thrown 5 or 6 sits at it at the last 5 years. And haven't killed a buck on it. Came close this year, but I really haven't put the time in it that I should. But there's 11 other guys hunting 218 acres. So in a sense, it's kind of like public land in a sense, in a way.
I'll be completely honest with you. That's hunted harder than any public that I hunt.
What you're talking about, my family farm, you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's crazy to me. You know what I mean? So I've got 2 goals in mind. It's okay, start killing bucks consistently on my family farm because it's difficult. I mean, it's big woods. It's 218 acres, all of it's timber, but like 60 acres of it. And that's a goal. And then the other goal is like, hey, just go pick a state, pick some public, e-scout it, and go. Figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And that's what you got to do, man. Like, you just got to, like, just do it. Just do it. Just go.
So when you started doing it, in PA and all that, when you started going out of state, like, how did that process work for you? Like, how were you picking the pieces of public that you wanted to go? Were you asking guys, networking, or was it just like, hey, I'm going to look on, Ohio DNR website and see what there is for public ground. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to go. Like, what was your process?
So, I mean, realistically, for me, I'm kind of a loner type person. I'm an only child. Like, I'm stubborn. I do shit I just kind of want to do it my own way.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really talk to a lot of guys other than my buddy, like, when I was kind of just bouncing around at home. But even then, like, we'd go to a spot and I'd be like, nah, I don't like it. And he'd be like, oh, I really like it. I'm like, no, don't like it. I'm going somewhere else. That's just kind of like my mindset. Like, I just keep bouncing around. And when I started hunting, New Jersey was the first out-of-state state that I hunted. And I basically was just kind of throwing little wolves because I carpooled with the guy, which was my boss, to work. And we got to September because Jersey opens in September.
Yep.
And he's basically was like, listen, dude, like, either we're gonna have to start driving separate, or you're going to get a New Jersey hunting license, and I can drop you off on a piece of public going to where my parents are, like he hunted private.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, looks like I'm getting a New Jersey license. And literally, like, I got the license, and I had a map that was printed out from, like, the DNR. So, like those shitty maps with, like,
oh yeah,
it looks like a kid Crayola, colored on them. I had one of those, and I just kind of walked. And I was like, oh, this looks pretty good, and sat down, started seeing deer. Now, granted, New Jersey's got a lot of deer. Not a lot of big deer. They have big deer, don't get me wrong, but they just have a lot of deer. So it kept me, like, interested. And I ended up killing, I don't know, like a little forkhorn that year on public, but it was my first public land buck with the bow, out of state, and I was pumped. And then I started shooting some more does the following year. And then I shot a 9-pointer, like a basket 9, and it just kept getting more and more hungry. And that was off of the same piece of public.
Mm-hmm.
And stopped working with those guys, but just kept going out to Jersey, and was like, well, there's more places that are closer to home. And that's kind of when OnX started to take off.
Yep.
Hunt Stand, like that stuff, and just slowly started integrating. Like, oh, that piece looks good. And a lot of my stuff is like now. I'm going to I have a dry erase board on my wall right now,
mm-hmm.
and I got 14 places that are on the board right now that I want to hit between now and pretty much turkey season.
Yep, just go scout and check out and figure out what the hell's going on.
Yep, just literally look at OnX and be like, all right, that's public, and make sure that you're allowed to be there first and foremost. That's the most important part.
Yep.
Just okay, that piece looks good. That piece looks good. That it's close. Whatever. It might not look good. Like, hey, it's 60 acres, I can cover that real quick. 70 acres, it's worth a shot.
Yep.
Just go walk the whole thing and be like, it's either going to be good or it's not going to be good, and just go on to the next one.
Okay, so when you first started hunting that piece in New Jersey, you didn't, this is your first public land out of state hunt, right? Like that, this
Mhm.
is your first, like you're popping your cherry. So
Yes.
what is your deal? Like how are you dissecting? I mean, you can only do so much e-scouting. Okay. In my opinion, you can only do so much. You can
Yeah.
only look
Yes.
at where the parking lots and where the pinch is and the edge is so much. You got to get boots on the ground. So like your first couple times in, were you like, okay, I'm going to go into this area. I'm going to walk around as much as I can and I'm going to find a tree and hang and hunt? Or was it just like, I'm going to walk and walk and walk until I find that spot and then hunt? Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to dissect like what your mindset is, because I'm trying to think of like what I would do. You know what I mean? Like how I would dissect it and how I would go into that first sit. Would I get in a tree or
Right.
would I just spend the whole night walking around? Like, where were you at?
So obviously now and then it's like two dramatically different styles of approach. Back then, like e-scouting wasn't a thing, or at least it wasn't to me at that point in time.
Right.
Like I said, I was just handed that piece of paper from the DNR. Like, okay, that's a field, that's woods.
Sure.
I'm just gonna walk to that woods, and honestly, it's just woodsmanship. Walking through. Okay, here's an oak flat. This looks pretty good. It's pretty tore up. Okay, there's water down there. Okay, that field's corn. And and it was the first time I ever really hunted ag too, because I live in like the mountains of PA where there's not a lot of ag. It's a lot of big woods. So, I was more or less just honestly just like throwing out shots like you're playing like Battleship, you know what I mean? Just like A6, all right, go sit there for a night, see what happens.
Okay.
And
So
then just
you're like,
slowly started,
you're literally just like guess and check. That's what you're
dude,
doing.
close eyes, throw dart at wall, go there. Like that's honestly all I was doing because I had nothing to build. Like I was building my foundation. I had nothing to build off of.
Yep. Okay. So in hindsight, knowing what you know now today, Dan Smeltz, what you know now, what would you do now?
So now, first thing I'm doing is going on. Well, I'm going to see when the seasons are and stuff like that, and then I'm going to go to Onyx, see what public land pieces I can. If it's where I live, I'm going to try and keep it within 2 hours. If it's going to where like in Kentucky, basically what I did is I broke down, I don't know, about a dozen WMAs that were relatively close to me, within 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to drop to the western side of Kentucky. I wanted to stay on the eastern side. So then I broke it down like, okay, I started like, I'll YouTube the names of the places, like the actual WMA, seeing if people are posting videos of hunting there and stuff like that, trying to get a grasp of how many people are going to be there, whether or not you can hunt small game. Is there a lot of hiking trails? Is there a lot of people pressure? That's what my first thing I'm trying to figure out. And then I'm trying to see like where I can get a hotel, an Airbnb, and then be within a half an hour with two, preferably more than one piece of public.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna get those spots and be like, all right, I'm gonna focus on this spot, this spot, and this spot, and I'm just gonna e-scout the shit out of it, drop a bunch of pins, whether it be like food sources, like what's this food source. What's this ridge? Is there water in this creek? Is it dried up? What's the deal? And then when I get to the spot, I'm gonna burn the first day, and I'm gonna drive around the whole public and see where guys are parked. And then I'm gonna base wherever guys aren't parked. I'm gonna go to those pins that are in relation to like those parking areas.
Okay.
Check them out. If it's hot, I'm gonna sit there in the afternoon. I usually leave my stand there overnight. Come back in the morning, give it a sit. If I see nothing, I'm going to the next pin, and I'm I just continually do that. If I see a bunch of deer, then I'll stay there. I'll give it like another 24 hours or another sit in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like hanging stands in the morning, especially when you don't know anything about the land and you're on some random piece on a state you've never been to, public you've never been to. You can hang your stand and get up there and be like, well, this place sucks. I got to move. And you're wasting time. That's the best time you want to be out there. So for me, it's just that first day I get there, specifically morning, I'm burning it by just seeing where the pressure is and trying to avoid that. And that's pretty much it. And then you're just bouncing around, just looking for sign, just hot sign. And,
yep.
Sometimes you're in it, sometimes you're not. And you just got to, just like I said, bounce around like you're playing Battleship, man. You're just kind of like, okay, that looks good over there. Ah, no, it sucks. Go to this place.
Okay. Yep. What are some things if you right now is telling the you, giving advice to the you when you were starting, what are some things that like you would tell yourself back then, like, hey, stay away from this, look for this, don't do that? Like, what are those things?
The biggest thing is don't leave deer to find deer. That's burned me a lot. It actually burned me this year in Delaware.
Okay.
But then on the same sense as that, when I went down to Kentucky, it was after Delaware, and I was like, I'm not doing what burnt me in Delaware, and that ended up burning me in Kentucky. So you know what I mean? Like you got to kind of like weigh that stuff out, but it's very, very, very difficult to do that in like one sit or one trip. You know, that stuff kind of comes when you're there multiple times, multiple years, stuff like that, where you can kind of build, okay, like this is what good deer movement is, this isn't, because you can't base good deer movement in Kentucky off of northeastern Pennsylvania, off of Ohio, because it's all different.
Right. And every situation is different too. I mean,
exactly.
You could be going a different time of the year to, you know, a year apart, and there's less guys this year than there was last year, and you hit a cold front or you hit some sort of front and you're like, oh God, the deer are here now, you know?
Right. And that's another thing too. Most of the time, I would say probably 80% of the time, all of my out-of-state hunts are early because there's less people in the woods.
Is that the sole reason why you go early, is because there are less people in the woods?
Well, that's not the sole reason. That's a main reason. And the other reason is Pennsylvania opens up kind of later. So I'm hitting those states that open up in, September.
That makes sense.
That.
Yep. What is PA? October, like early October?
It's like the first Saturday in October usually.
Which that could fall on like what? It's got to be in the first week, right?
Yeah. Usually it's either the last week of September or the first week of October.
Gotcha. So that's kind of like Ohio, I think.
Yes, we're very similar to Ohio.
Yeah, because I remember hunting Ohio like September 28th or 29th one year, and then hunting it like October 3rd, and it's like, holy shit, this is weird. This is different, you know?
Yep, and ours is exactly like that. Now there's some places down like Southeast PA and I think Southwest PA that open up 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the state, but they're like around the big cities, around Philly, Pittsburgh, shit like that.
Yep, I gotcha. What, man, this is so much thrown at you at one time, but like, what are some things early on that were the mistakes you made that were like, someone punched you right in the face, like, oh God, that's a mistake. Like right away, what are some things that you did that were just like, I'm never doing that again?
Well, one was not hunting when it's hot out. A lot of times in Jersey, like we would be working and get out at 2:00 in the afternoon and be 85 degrees, and we're like, there's no deer moving.
Yep.
And we go home, and that's a huge mistake. The deer have to move. They're gonna move. You just gotta, it's just gonna be a tighter window. And we found that out in Kentucky the first year we went there because it was 100 degrees pretty much the whole week we were there. And, we were hanging double sets. My girlfriend was with me, so I was hanging double sets, literally taking my shirt off and wringing it out and putting it back on. It's like disgusting, but we've seen deer every day. Midday, 2:00, it didn't matter.
Yeah, dude, and how do you combat that? This is something I fight with all the time, and I talk about it a lot. It's how do you fight the inner demon in you that says, don't do this, because someone way back when or whenever it was wrote the book, The Law on Hunting. This is what you do, and this is what you don't. Dude, I freaking hate that. Like,
I know,
and everybody falls into it,
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to, especially when the guys who are telling you are, extremely successful, very good hunters. If they say something, it's almost like, well, you got to almost listen to it. Like, why shouldn't you listen to it? He's successful doing it. It's got to work.
Dude,
but
it's so tricky. Like, how do you personally combat that when I talk about preconceived notions, or I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but it's like my family farm. I talked about, I've hunted it my whole life. And there's a certain ridge that nobody's ever killed a buck on. But if you start getting pictures of a good buck, on that ridge, and he's working at everything, it's like, oh, okay, do I go hunt there or do I go hunt over here where I saw him with a naked eye in daylight once, but he's frequenting more, it's like all these scenarios, and it's like, then you have the preconceived notion of like, I don't even know if that's the right word or not, but it's like, nobody's ever killed a deer on that ridge. Why would I go there? That's what kills me. You know what I mean? It's like that is what I think saves a lot of deer, you know?
Yeah, it really does. Like, and that's, it's funny you say that. I never really thought about it like that, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Like, there's pieces I can think of right now on the 2 pieces of private that, and I think this happens more on private than public, because public, I'm pretty much like, screw it.
Mm-hmm.
So what if a deer gets down on me and blows, and I spook it or it blows? I'm not going to shoot a deer if I'm not in here. So who cares if I spook one deer?
Right. Yep.
But private, you're more playing that chess match, so you're overthinking it is what it is. Really.
Exactly. That's all you're doing is you're overthinking it.
And so you're like, oh, well, I can't do this because this might happen, so I got to go do this. But, the wind's a little off or the thermals are bad or whatever. And cameras are brutal anymore. I mean, I love running cameras, but you gotta take it with a grain of salt, because you're only seeing a little window, and you could really get yourself into bad habits with cameras. And I run a shit ton of cameras.
Yep. I'm gonna podcast with a buddy tomorrow about this subject, because it just killed him his best buck. Well, it might be his best buck. It's a slammer in Missouri last week, and he's out in Missouri, and I'm not going to go into a long dissertation of it, but he calls me and he goes, hey man, what do you think? Just want your thoughts. This buck is he showed up like, I can't remember. I'll get the full story tomorrow, but he showed up, on the turnip plot, twice. And then he showed up on the beans last night in daylight. Where should I go? And I said, what? My words were to him, this is how I combat it. And it's, the last 3 years, I've been really trying to work hard on this, and it's going with my gut every time. Mm-hmm. And he goes, yes. I said, well, first of all, I said, what's the weather like? And he goes, well, it's really cold. And I said, well, go to grain, go to beans. But I said, what does your gut tell you? And he goes, I don't know. And I'm like, that's wrong, because your gut always knows. Your gut is never indecisive. It's the little inner demon in you that says, don't go there because of X, Y, Z. I said, if your gut it's never, it'll tell you. What is your gut saying? He's like, my gut says go to the beans. I said, I'd go to the beans. He goes in there at night, kills them. You know what I mean? It's like, he goes, he calls me that night when he's sitting over the deer, and he goes, if I wouldn't have called you, I wouldn't have went to the beans. I was going to the turnips, because he showed up there more. And I'm like, I don't know if there's anything to it, but my whole thing is go with your gut. Go with your gut. It's never indecisive. Go with your gut. Whatever your gut tells you, even if you've never killed a deer on that ridge, go with your gut if it's telling you to go there. That's the best way I can say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very important on public land. It's like very, very important, because you're going to second guess the shit out of yourself.
Well, and two, you're traveling to hunt. I do a lot of traveling to hunt too. So you always feel like you're on a time crunch. Shit, I'm only here 7 days.
Yes.
So it's like, I want to get it done. And then 3 of your buddies slam deer for the first 3 days you're there, and they might be in a different state, and you're like, shit, like I want to kill a buck. It's like you see all these deer falling. It's like the pressure just mounts and builds, and it's self-inflicted pressure. That's all it is.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'm not into a big dick measuring contest. You know what I mean? I don't do that at all. I'm happy for everybody that kills a deer. But it's like you see them killing deer. It's like, man, I want that feeling. I want that.
Yeah, I want to kill a deer too. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no, that's a tough one, man. It's tough, and that's the best way I can that I can combat it. But it's hard getting over that feeling,
I mean, sometimes it feels like the battle within yourself is more difficult than the actual battle between you and the deer.
100%. 100%. The last, about 3 years ago, and I would say from 2012 to about 3 years ago, going into the 2019 season. The reason why I know that's because when I killed the Hambino in Iowa, it kind of changed things for me. But, those years from 12 to 19, I really was like the guy that I wanted history with a deer. I wanted trail cam pictures of him. I wanted to kill him in this block of timber because it was the timber that you should kill him in, or I wanted to do it this because it's this. And honestly, man, it doesn't happen like that maybe once. Like, I can tell you, I'd have to really go back and think, but I can tell you I've maybe killed 2 bucks, 3 bucks after this year, my Michigan buck this year. 3 bucks that I had numerous years of history, or not numerous, like over, years of history with them and watched them all summer. There's only been, I think, 3, out of all the bucks that I've killed. And it's like, you want that to happen so bad, but it doesn't happen a lot when you're in a scenario like me. If you're Mark Drury, a little different. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
It's once I started getting out of that, like, it's got to happen because of this, or this looks good because it's picturesque, because it feels like a deer should come through here. Once I started getting over that, I was like, I started killing bigger deer. I will say that, like,
yeah,
and seeing better deer and having more encounters and all.
that's actually a good point too. Like, especially hunting public. I mean, this is across the board, but hunt where the deer are, not where you want them to be.
That's
I found myself doing
huge. That's a piece of advice right there that is like, I feel like would be huge, because a lot of people think the different, right?
Yes. Especially when you go into a spot that you've never been before. And this is the problem that I have with e-scouting sometimes, is you have like preconceived like notions that, okay, the deer are going to be here. So you're just like, you got your blinders on and you just go straight to that spot. And you're like, oh, this looks really good. And you sit up and you don't see a goddamn thing for 2 days.
Yep. You're almost placing deer there because you want to kill them there,
Exactly. And you'll find like 2 acorns on the ground and be like, oh, there's acorns here. I'm hanging. You're like, what are you doing, dude?
And they're like bur oaks that the deer hardly touch.
Yeah, exactly. And you just like come up with any like logical reasoning, like, oh, yep, there's deer here. Oh, yep, there's deer here. You'll come into a spot, it might be like a turkey scratching and be like, oh, there's just great there. Like, no, it's not. But you just can't see it because you're so focused on, because you've been looking at maps for so long, and you're like, because you said like the stress level, like you're so intent on killing something that you kind of lose perspective of the whole game.
Yep. And
you just kind of you lose where you're at.
How do you keep perspective of yourself on a rut hunt if you're going out of state?
Man, that's tough. I like to keep. Man, that's a good question, actually.
You've never been asked that, have you?
No, I haven't.
So put yourself into a situation where you've been on a out of state hunt where you're like, shit, I gotta kill. Like, how do you ground yourself to keep your eye on the goal that you want to achieve? And I fall into it too. You look at social media, it's like all these people are knocking deer down. You want to have that. You know what I mean? You're like, man, I want to kill a buck. I don't care who you are. I love seeing other people kill deer too, but I want to kill deer. So how do you ground yourself and stay within yourself and do the things you need to? Because once you start making emotional decisions, that's when shit goes awry, bad, in a quick hurry.
Yes. So I think a big thing is like, especially when you're like, say the Kentucky trip, I didn't even go on social media, like and share nothing. I was just like, I would go on, post the shit that I wanted to post, but I wasn't going through my feed.
Okay.
And I think that really will help you stay grounded because you're not getting that outside influence pressure.
Sure.
And just keep it fun. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Keep it fun. And go in with the understanding that you're probably going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you see a deer, then it's like everything else is up from there.
Yep.
And don't get too high on the highs and too low on the lows. Really. I mean, and that's like probably, I would say, the basics to it. Just try and keep your mind just as level as you possibly can. And probably don't get high on the highs is the most important thing.
Yep. So
because you'll fall quick.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% on that, because this year I actually was with a couple guys that have never been on an out-of-state hunt out of Michigan. So, one guy was like, I want to kill like a 140 or 150. And I'm like, that is totally fine. But I said, I told him, I was like, you have to be okay with a tag sandwich. And it was kind of like the look that I got was kind of like, what do you mean? Well, what I mean by is like, if you want to kill a 140 or 150, out of state, like it doesn't matter if it's public or private, you just got to be okay with going home with a tag in your pocket, because you're going to see some bucks that you would probably want to kill, and you're going to pass up, and you might not see that 140 or 150 when you're on a 5-day hunt, or a 7-day hunt. So
absolutely,
you got to be realistic with yourself as well. You know,
You do, and you have to be okay with failing. If you're not okay with failing, public land
100%.
games definitely not your game.
Well, even private though too. I mean,
True, yeah,
you got to
true.
be okay with failing and learning. Like
Yes.
you don't want to have the mindset of like I got to kill another buck to put on the wall so I can show my buddies. Like that's the wrong. I feel like that's the wrong way of doing it. I think you got to be like okay with coming home with nothing but learning tenfold of what you before you went down there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's so many little games that are within the big game that you can learn on. Like
Oh yeah,
tons
for
of different things, you know?
It's like I kind of relate it to your hunting quote unquote career is like you're writing a book, right? And every time you go out there, you're writing a sentence in a chapter.
Great way to
You're
look
writing
at
a new
it.
chapter, right? Whether that chapter is public land, private land, hunting wind, hunting food, hunting off the ground, mobile hunting, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You're just every time you go out in the woods, you have to write something. You got to write something in that chapter. And the only way you can write a book is years and years and years. Like you can only get so many chapters in your book by watching, YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, shit like that. But you're really going to get like the base of your book and the content, and it's like lack of better terms, in your book by going out and doing it. And the only the thing that should be editing your book is the deer. Don't let outside sources edit your book because once again, you're going to get those blinders up. And just because a guy Kurt might hunt a certain way or you might hunt a certain way, don't let the way those guys affect you in a negative way because, I hunt in Pennsylvania, I'm not going to listen to anything that Kurt has to say in Illinois.
Right.
Okay, that some of that might be right, but there's things that Kurt says or Austin says or, you say or Jeremy Beck up there says in Wisconsin that could correlate to you. You just haven't been in that situation yet.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Your deer aren't going to act the same as the Midwest deer or the, far, far north deer. Or the deer that are 2 miles down the road might act different.
Yep.
So by letting somebody else kind of edit your book and tell you how to hunt, you're already realistically starting on the wrong foot.
That's a great way to look at it. Writing a book, I never looked at it that way. That's really a good way of looking at it. And honestly, back when I was in high school and college, when Lee and Tiffany were like the thing, you know what I mean? They were the TV personalities, and I always thought I needed food plots, lush food plots to kill bucks because that's what Lee did. So I did that. I went and spent money. I mean, I was tight. I was so tight with my money that I could squeak when I walked, but I felt like I was spending money and putting in these lush food plots. I'd be sitting on them, wouldn't see deer, wouldn't kill. I think I killed maybe one doe on a food plot. No, I killed a doe and a buck on a food plot in all the years I hunted them. And I'm like, this is like something's wrong. And I'm not doing something right. And when I got over the fact that you have to take a little bit of what they're saying and put it into your scenario and then try to mold it to yourself. Like you said, what Kurt does, we're talking about Kurt Geyer. If anybody's wondering who the hell Kurt is, Kurt Geyer. If what Kurt's doing, I listen to Kurt, and the thing is, he might say something, and I'm like, well, that won't work here, but I might try it this way, and then it might work. But one thing I like to break down is what are some of the things that no matter where you go in the country, it is going to benefit you. One is pressure. It's pressure. So in my Michigan farms, I don't go into anything, hardly at all. I try to stay the heck out, and I try to put low pressure. Anywhere you go in the country, it doesn't matter. I don't care where you're at. Keep the pressure low and you're good. Pick out those things that would translate to anywhere, and there's not a lot of them, but there's some, and build off that. But I always say what makes the best deer hunter is the person that can adapt, or on the fly, who can adapt to a scenario right away within a split second. Boom. Doing this, kills a buck, kills a deer, whatever,
Absolutely. Yep. The killers, the quote unquote killers, are those guys that have plan B, C, and D because they know plan A and B and C might not work. So they're already looking ahead to plan E and going, oh, I've been in this situation before. I got to do this now. But this didn't work last time, so I'm going to do it like this or, whatever.
And honestly, the only way to get there is experience, doing things, falling flat on your fucking face. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and having your buddies
yeah.
laugh at you, you laugh at you, you feel like absolute dirt, and then picking yourself back up and going and doing it something different, you know?
Oh, yeah, you're going to go through all of them. You're going to be pissed off. Like, oh, why, I'm not seeing shit. How these guys are seeing, like, what's going on?
Yep.
You just got to keep going. You'll figure it out eventually. You just got to keep going. Everybody's learning curve is different, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, when a lot of guys, I listen to a lot of Andy May. I don't know, you probably know who Andy May is from Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, he talks about scouting more than he hunts. And I've heard a lot of guys talk about that. The first time I heard that 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, you are ridiculous. You can't kill deer from the couch. You can't kill deer from sitting on the road. You can, but it probably wouldn't be within the ethical laws of your state. But,
Right.
But I started, where my house is at, and I killed my buck this year in Michigan. It's all farm ground. Dude, I've drove around more mornings in the last 3 years than I've sat in mornings, and I've had more success doing that as far as like seeing it, reacting either that evening or reacting right away, doing a spot and stock, whatever, getting a stand. I've had more encounters and opportunities than I've ever had. And I'm like, wow, there's something to this,
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. You're making a decision based off of like an actual factor that you're seeing rather than a hypothetical situation that you made up the night before.
Correct. Right. And, I've put less and less merit on trail cams in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's made it a lot more stress-free, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not as stressed, I don't feel like. I just kind of go hunt and just kind of see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I use my trail cams predominantly just for scouting. Like I'm right around sub 50 cameras roughly.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, and they're not like some of them are Tasco's $28 ones, and I'm telling you right now, like those are great cameras. I got I know you work with X's cameras. They're great cameras. I got a bunch of those too. Wild Games, whatever.
Yep.
I have a lot, like all of them, Moultrie's, the whole 9 yards, 5 points, everything. And I'll put I'm going to say probably half of them cameras that I'll put out in July. I started putting cameras out in June just because I have so many of them. It takes me a while to get them out.
Yep.
And I like to have them all out by mid-July at the latest. And half of them cameras are going to sit there until I can get my ass back there in January, February, and check those cameras, because what I'm looking for is I'm looking for spots that no people are walking through. And if I can put a camera out and nobody walks by it in 4 or 5 months, I'm like, okay, I got something here, because there's deer there somewhere. Now I just got to find them.
Yep.
And then I'll start doing clusters of 4 or 5 cameras. And you can do this if you only have 10 cameras. You can do this if you have 5 cameras. I'll do little teardrops from the parking lot. And I'll put one close to the parking lot, maybe on a trail, seeing how much pressure is coming in on that trail, human pressure. And then I'll kind of balloon that teardrop out and then come back to the parking lot. And I'll go back. I let my camera sit at least a month, at least minimum.
Yep.
I'll go back, check those cameras, and then based off of what I'm seeing, then I start moving cameras around. And
do you ever do it for historical data as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's when I'm putting those cameras out. Like I said, the half of them for the year. I'm setting up for what I'm going to do the following year.
Sure. Yep.
And then it's very unfortunate when you go back to your camera and the SD card corrupted. Somebody stole it. Somebody shot it. Somebody spun it around the tree. I don't really deal with that shit too much anymore, because I like to get kind of deep, far in, and I hang my cameras a stick high, and I'm 6'2", so I can get pretty high with one stick.
Yep.
So generally speaking, people don't really see it, and I think it doesn't affect the deer as much because they can't pick up on that red light flash. And if you're running a video, that just constant red IR just going off. We've all seen the deer just staring at your camera every time he takes a picture.
I agree. Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah, dude. And 3 years ago I made that jump. No, 4 years ago. I'm sorry. I made that jump. I was going to Iowa, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to put a lot of time in Michigan, and I'm just going to put my cameras out, let them marinate, see what happens. And honestly, when I pulled the cameras, that January after season when they sit all year, that was a light bulb moment because it was scary when I felt like I need to go check my cameras. I need to see what's there because that's what's going to tell me where I need and when I need to hunt. That is, I'm not saying that's wrong because it can be right. I've killed a couple bucks on the fact that like the most recent information, they're daylighting. I'm getting in. I killed one this year in Illinois. Most recent information. Yeah. It wasn't the buck that I killed, but there was a big deer in there the day before daylighting, and I'm like, I'm going in after him. And this one came out, and I'm like, yep, you are getting it. And, so, but when I got that data, like there was one particular camera from October 10th to like the 25th of October, there was like 18 different bucks using this little, it was an edge. It was where mature woods meets like popple shoot thicket where it's been logged off for like 10 years and it's real thick.
Yeah. Good edge, yeah.
Yep, and it was a great edge. And there was like 18 different bucks in daylight in those 10 to 15 days. We're using it like crazy. So guess what? There was a stand there next year, and my buddy went in there and missed one in that time frame. And it's like, he had an opportunity. So it's like, man, that's a light bulb moment right there. Boom. And that's how I've been using cameras. Shit, I run 15 cameras. I feel like that's a lot, but talking to you, that's not a lot. But this year I only ran 5 of them. I left 10 in the bag, never got them out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's 2 behind my house right now. I have not checked since the first week of October. One is on a pinch that is like just marinating, and I'm actually, now that we're talking about it, I'm chomping at the bit to go get it and like see how the deer are using this pinch, because I felt like they were moving kind of like what would it be? It'd be southeast to northwest kind of thing, I think. And when I checked it the first week of October, they were not using it that way. It was totally different. So now I can't wait to go back and just kind of dissect it and see how they're moving. And yeah, man, that right there is a way to learn a lot, and in 1 year learn quite a bit in a quicker rate, I would say.
Oh, for sure. Dude, there's nothing harder, I feel like, than letting your camera soak. Like everybody wants to go check those cameras after they've been there for a week.
Yep.
And for me, because I have so many cameras, what actually works out, like I'll put out, let's just say one weekend, I'll put 5 out, and then I'll put 5 out, and then I'll put 10 out. Well, I have like that constant rolling, like I'm checking cameras every weekend, but I'm never in the same spot more than once a month.
Yep.
And like I'm looking at my board right now, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 12 cameras that I haven't touched since June.
Wow.
That I got to go get.
Are you running any cell cams?
Yeah, I run cell cams. I got like 8 or 9 cell cams.
Okay.
I sometimes feel like that's too many.
Why do you say that?
It's too much information right now where I have to make too many decisions.
Okay.
And I fall into the trap where, and it happened to me this year, and I know better, but I still did it. I did one of those where you like hang a vine from a rope to make like a mock scrape. I did that, and I had deer like September just crushing it. And I was like, all right, that's it. I got the cell cam on there. I'm not going in there until it heats up. Well, the problem is the spot was like, I had spotty service. So I would get stuff, I wouldn't get stuff. And it just so happened that I never really got what I was looking for in that camera. And then I pulled the card, and I had deer on it almost every day. But the cell cam wasn't sending it, my phone wasn't receiving it. The camera, the one thing I don't like about some cell cams is it'll send like the second photo.
Yep.
And the deer's already gone by then.
You get an ass or something like that.
Yeah, so you just never know. And, sometimes it'll be like, I'll have a couple on private, a couple on public. And then what do you do if you got 3 cameras going off on scratch? You're like, shit, like now what do I do? And you always pick the wrong one, it seems like.
Yep.
So for me, it's kind of like the less decisions I have to make, the better off I am in the long run.
I could see that. I could
Like
see how
like
that benefit
decisions
you for
like
sure.
yeah, like on point decisions, because then you start second guessing yourself, and then it goes right back to what we were talking about before, just going with your gut. And then, it's really difficult to do that when you're looking at your phone and, oh man, this thing's blowing up.
I'm going to go against the grain a little bit, not saying you're
Mhm.
wrong at all, but I'm going to try to throw a different perspective at it for cell cams. I love all the information
Mhm.
because I love it instantly to my phone. Why are deer moving? Like Saturday, this last Saturday,
Mhm.
Christmas. It was Christmas. I had 4 bucks show up, all herded up together in daylight on one of my cell cams, and I'm like, okay, I have not had a buck on this cell cam in over a month and a half. Why are you here? So
Mhm.
then my wheels start turning. Why? What are you doing here? What are you doing? Well, the best thing I could come up with was, other than moon phase and stuff like that, the best thing I could come up with is they were hitting a clover. They were hitting clover, and it was colder than shit. Like it's been pretty warm, and it got pretty cold as far as like not as cold as it should be for December, but it got pretty cold after a decent warm spell, and these deer just kind of moved through. They were there for over an hour, just milling around, just right in front of the camera, eating on the clover, and I'm like, okay, so I love that about it because next year, coming into like Christmas time, December, if I'm getting some of the some of the same scenarios, whether it's weather or a cold front coming through or a weather front or something like that, I know I can kind of strike, maybe go on a whim, where it's like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw a sit at it, see what happens. Historical data like we talked about, like I like that data. I could see where it could be a hindrance though, because like you said, let's say you have, I don't know, shooter bucks on 4 of the 8, and it's like, in daylight, like, what do you do?
Right.
Like, are you starting to like add up inches? Where are you going to go? Like,
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
one's
You're
bigger, or this one's closer.
trying to
Like,
get
what do you do?
greedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, I definitely see where you're talking, but I've learned so much about deer movement, deer behavior, moon phases. I'm terrible at moon phases and like learning, because there's guys that are like, oh yeah, the 4th day after a full moon, you're gonna kill every time. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't get that. Like, so I like to. That's another one of those things. I like to put it into my perspective, into
Mhm.
what works for me. And it might be like the 7th day after a full moon. I don't know. You know what I mean? And that's what
Right.
works for me, but it might not work for you. So like I kind of dissect it that way as well. But I love that information and learning a lot instantly to your phone. That's cool to
Yes.
me.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore. When I was saying this, kind of like pretty much the negative stuff about cameras, and I don't want to be like the Debbie Downer
No,
on the
no, no, no,
cameras,
no. And I wasn't
because
calling you out for it either. I wanted to kind of get a different perspective of like, this
right.
is the way I look at it too, for two different perspectives of like, this is the downfall that you see. This is the upside that I see. And you probably
Yeah,
see the same thing.
right. Right. And like as you were saying that, I was thinking about it, putting myself in your shoes. If I had a camera on like a food source like that, I would probably view that a lot different. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff more like transitional.
Yep. Hmm.
So I'm not getting the amount that you're probably going to get on a food source.
Yep.
Mainly because it's public land. We don't have like ag fields. It's more, you're going to be in the acorn like stuff more or less for food. And if there is ag, it's going to be destroyed by pheasant hunters, small game hunters. The deer are still going to hit it, but
Right.
it's going to be in the middle of the night.
Right.
So,
No, that's a good point.
but a big thing like out here is like if a scrape heats up, dude. I mean, there's nothing better than the trail camera going off 10 o'clock in the morning on a scrape. Like that's what you're waiting for, and that's what I was waiting for. And I trusted that the camera was going to be perfect too much instead of just going, okay, it's the end of October. I know deer are going to be hitting scrapes. I should be sitting on scrapes.
Yeah, and that just kind of goes to the point where it's like, okay, your instincts have to take over. I think personally, your instincts have to take over, like over a trail cam in a way. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Like,
yeah. I mean, you go with your gut, right?
go
It's
with your
still the
gut.
same thing. It's still,
Exactly.
yeah.
Definitely. What? How should I put this? I guess trying to think of how I want to word this. I'm losing train of thought now.
I could give you some time and go over. I would like to say, especially for, like, if you want to go into public, like, your first time, or if it's not your first time, they're like overlooked. I'm saying like 1,000 times there, but overlooked things that are going to happen that are going to negatively impact you that are out of the norm. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to use an example that I just had this year. I went down to Delaware with a buddy to hunt public land, never stepped foot there, only cyber scouted. And when we got there, we failed to realize that dove season and dove hunting is huge down there.
Okay.
So we wanted to hunt food sources, beans, stuff like that, because September, that's, you could get on a good buck on the food source on daylight in the afternoon in a field, but you ain't going to be doing it. And there's 20 guys in that field blasting doves. You know what I mean? And then another one was we hunted Delaware right after a hurricane went through. And now Delaware is like all sand. So it literally like eliminated all sign on the ground.
Really?
Yeah. So you're walking around like, man, there's like nothing going on. I mean, when you did find sign, you knew it was fresh then, but you had like nothing to go off of.
That's a good point though, man. Like looking farther than what hunting might deliver as far as like, okay, Delaware is made up of a ton of sand. You know what I mean? And you got some weather coming through, in your case, a hurricane, whatever it might be, a windstorm, doesn't matter. Might eliminate some of that sign, but the dove hunters thing, I would have never thought of that. I probably never would have thought of that.
Because like we have a dove season, but nobody dove hunts over here. Mm-hmm. And we don't have sand. We got a hurricane goes through, but it doesn't change anything. Like you can still see old scrapes. Obviously, you're always going to see your rubs, but you can still see old runs. But then you're like, well, is this a good old deer run, or is this just where water rushed through here in a hurricane?
Right. Yep. Okay, so hard transition here. That's a good point. What you just made.
Sorry.
What I was trying to get out, and I don't know why it was so hard for me to say that. Probably because I'm a couple beers deep here and slurring my words. But what would be your perfect prototypical scenario to kill a buck? As far as like, are you wanting to? You say you hunt a lot early. Are you like an early food source guy? Are you get close to bedding? Are you hunting scrapes? Like, what is the scenario that when you draw it up in your head, you're writing your book, when it's like, okay, this chapter 3 is I killed my biggest deer ever. What is like that picture look like where you want to kill them? You know what I mean? What you want to be doing? Okay.
Well, you know what? We're going to play it out right now for Delaware next year because I'm going back.
Delaware. I mean, it's the biggest buck state out there, right? It's the new Iowa, I heard.
Yeah, like we probably shouldn't be saying this because Delaware's got some really good deer.
I'm coming next year then. Give me a
and
spot.
You get to shoot 2 of them. No, dude, you're more than welcome. There's a good amount of public land too, believe it or not.
Is there? What's non-resident tags?
Like $300.
Okay.
2.
Right.
I think you're allowed 2 bucks and like 4 does. I think.
I got you. All right. Okay, what's your prototypical spot? What do you got?
So this is what's going to happen. We're going to go shed hunt it. We're going to find a good shed. We're going to hang cameras. We're going to get that deer on camera. And then we're going to go down there, sit somewhere where we can have an observation and see what he's doing. And we're going to hunt the fields that aren't quote unquote designated dove fields, which didn't know that was a thing. And we're just going to seed him, make a move, get in between, and hopefully that seals the deal. Now that's obviously like very, very specific to like the first week of the season.
Yep. Okay.
Then after that,
I got a monkey wrench I'm going to throw in.
Go ahead.
You find a good shed, you put cameras out, you do all that. You don't see a hide or hair of him. You don't see him on camera, nothing. You just found the shed. Maybe you get one picture of him in the summer, okay? You know he's alive. You do know that. You come in the season, you don't see him from a stand, you don't see him from camera for a month. What are you doing then?
That deer means absolutely nothing to me.
You're going to the next then. What if he's 190-inch typical?
Yeah, I'm going to throw everything I got at him at that point.
Attaboy.
A deer of a lifetime like that, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to probably lose my job, lose my girlfriend. Like, spend way too much. I'll have 100 trail cameras at that point in time.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try and pound realistically in a scenario like that. I'm gonna try and hopefully find the bedding now and go off of my gut and try and get between the bedding and the feed. And that's, I mean, predominantly the goal no matter what, because that's going to be your highest success rates.
Yep.
Until maybe you get in closer to the rut where you're going to go in a place that you don't know really or have very little experience with. Then you're going to want to, go to those transition pieces and stuff like that. But early season, it's that bed to feed, and you're going to try and get as close to that bedding as you can.
How close you getting?
I mean, it really all depends on the scenario.
Okay, so I'm going to paint
If I know where
you.
the bed is, like 100 yards, is like that's where I'm getting close. If I don't know where the bed, like the specific bed is, and I'm just kind of guesstimating a bedding area, sometimes what I'll do is I'll hang a stand to where like you'll be going into it and you kind of get like that weird gut feeling like, oh man, it's getting kind of sketchy, and I'll just set up right there.
Okay.
Right, and then I'll put a trail camera out on what I think that trail might be,
mm-hmm.
and then come back in the morning. If I have that deer and there's obviously the timestamp, then I'm going to try and like, okay, in my head go, all right, if he's doing this, he might be moving this far. It might be taking him this long. All right, I got to go another 200 yards or I got to go another 700 yards if it, depending on what that, if I don't get the deer, I'm going to go in even further. Worst case scenario, I bump the deer out and try and then implement the whole bump and dump thing, which is, man, it's like one of those things where you're like, when it works, but when it doesn't, it definitely doesn't.
You kick yourself for 10 years.
Yes. Yeah, and that actually happened in Kentucky the first year. We bumped the deer off of sometimes what I like to do in the afternoons is get out my stand and try and get out of there before the deer come through. Like if it's getting close to that, like, dark, where it's dark in the woods, but it's still light in the fields.
Yep.
I'm going to try and get out of the timber and get to the field, so you never know. You might catch a glimpse of a tail or a glimpse of a antler, especially if you got good binos. If you got good optics, you can really scan those fields at very, very low light. And we actually bumped a 140-inch deer, and I was like, all right, he's going to come back in here. I wasn't hard. I went 50 yards downwind of where we bumped him, and I should have went 100 because he went another 50, and I just couldn't get a shot off in the timber. But, I mean, everything I did, everything was right. I just didn't go far enough.
Yep. And that's all just, feeling it out. Like, what do you, like?
Yeah, and it's a lot of shithouse luck, to be completely honest.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's skill in hunting, don't get me wrong, but, like, it's, when it comes down to being lucky, like it does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, the more work you put in, the more you can put yourself in a situation to be lucky.
For sure, yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a wild animal. It's going to go wherever the hell it wants to go.
Yep, definitely. Well, hey man, I'm gonna shut this down. I love this conversation, but I'm gonna shut it down. I've got some issues with a cord right now, and everybody's probably hearing it. And I think the conversation has been freaking phenomenal, but I don't want to let every bit of info out there. I want to be able to do it again with you, so I don't want to blow our wad or boil the ocean right in the first podcast. So.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
I appreciate you coming on doing this, buddy. I really do, and this is going to be one of many for sure.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the time too and the opportunity, man. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I guess if you get a chance to get out the rest of the season, good luck.
Thanks, man. You too.
All right, thank you. All right, there you have it. Thank you, Dan, very much for coming on, man. It's greatly appreciated. We've been talking about doing this for a little while. Finally was able to get it done. It was a late night deal. I mean, we were doing it about 10, 11 o'clock at night, but you get that on those big jobs. So thank you very much, Dan, and also everybody out there listening. Thank you very much for all the support and all the downloads. Please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, and just put a little written review in there. That'd be great. So got a lot of good podcasts coming up here in the next couple weeks and for the year of 2022. I can't wait to start unfolding everything for you guys. So if you guys have tags to fill, good luck the rest of the year. And don't forget, we'll be right here next week on the Fall Podcast.